Boom. Now we're live. Ha! All right. This has been a treat today, trying to figure out the mechanics behind the scenes. I am not technically gifted whatsoever, and I appreciate your patience. And I do want to say thank you to my buddy Wes, genius Wes, because he has been tinkering and messing around with all of the stuff, all the things, and made this possible. The graphics, all that stuff that y'all were complimenting. Oh, I should activate the chat. That's the other thing. This new streaming service won't let me activate the chat until it goes live. So now you can give it a shot in there, y'all. So I'm sorry about that. We're still working out the kinks. This is week 2 of this. So thank you for your patience. And sorry for the delay. But yes, a massive thank you to Wes, all of his hard work, helping to bring you at the mic, the Thursday deep dives and the Friday live stream, just experimenting. So thank you for hanging in there with us. Okay. I am just activating all of the buttons here, making sure that everybody can see. All right, we're good. Okay. And thank you, Born Genius and Maggie for saying hello. Now I see the chat is working. Okay. There we go. All right. Last week, if you missed the Thursday live stream, the deep dive with Tony Arterburn, we covered so much, from Las Vegas to CBD, Osama bin Laden's fake name, everything in between. There was just so much. Please go back and watch that. The Friday live stream, we hung out with Jeff Fisher from The Blaze, my buddy and coworker over there. That was a lot of fun. Tomorrow, another coworker, Steve Baker from The Blaze, is going to be, I think it's like his 3rd time that he will be on the Friday live stream. He's kind of a veteran for that. And then you've also got Shem Von Schreck, who'll be making his Friday live stream debut, a buddy of Steve's that he introduced us on Pat Gray last month. So that's tomorrow. Okay, today I've got a veteran of the boy. You know what? My gosh, Steve Friend, I'm going to bring you in here. I think, just thinking off the top of my head, I think between you and Brad Staggs, I think you two are my most frequent guests over here, because you've been on the Friday live stream goofing around, but this is your 3rd, I'm calling them FBI fails episode. This is your 3rd time installment of telling us the many, I'm not going to say always. I'm sorry. For several years now, I have been unimpressed with the FBI and wanted it completely, what we hope Kash Patel is going to do to it, give it an enema, either get rid of it or completely clean it out. But the things that I learned from you are just, they're mind-boggling. They are so, and I mean that with all sincerity. The facts that you bring to these conversations that we have here on the Thursday deep dive are just, I sit back and as an American who pays for this organization to exist, the facts that you drop on us, and you drop on your own show, which is American Radicals podcast. I made a fancy little graphic for you here, and I want to get some use out of it here. So let me do this here. Over on Rumble, Steve does a show over there. You guys, there is oh, nice. There we go. You got a nice ding in there. So anyway, the free plug. Is that what that little ding was? Did you hit that ding?
I didn't do it, but I'll take it.
I don't know where that came from. Now I'm nervous as hell, man. Okay, so anyway, you guys do a great job over there exposing the truth. And in fact, you've got some breaking news, I think, that just came across your desk just as we were getting started here. What share that with us, would you please? Whistleblower, former FBI agent Steve Friend, who is an absolute patriot for this country, and the injustices that you've had to deal with for sticking your neck out have just, I really hope this next Donald Trump term, I really hope that you get back to where you belong. But anyway, more on that shortly. What's the breaking news, man?
We'll file this under yet another whistleblower disclosure. Hopefully, a member of Congress or Inspector General's office is watching at the mic for a deep dive Thursday.
Sure.
And I'll read it verbatim. This was put out among all employees at the FBI. I had heard this from another person that they were talking about this, but now it's official. Quote, in recent weeks, the FBI took steps to close the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. Effective December 2024, special emphasis programs have been realigned under the Office of Equal Employment Opportunity Affairs. So they're going to do the whack-a-mole, shut down the DEI office and move all those people over to EEO, so those communists can continue to infiltrate and spread their poison around. And they're just figuring if they take the signage off the walls, then Director Patel will not go in and clean house.
Well, I thought we were gonna have some hope. Not so much.
The subterfuge is nothing if not their expertise at this point. They're trying a lot of different things ahead of anticipating Patel coming in, and they're not very good at operational security, which is why people who are in the inside are telling me what their plans are. And like you have been very unimpressed with the FBI. I'm very unimpressed with their efforts to spike his directorship because they're not impressive. They actually haven't done the amount of preparation and research necessary, like saying things, they're going to try to stall and prevent Cash from getting a security clearance. So he can't come in the building. Sorry, director, you might have that job, but it's going to take us 3, 6, 9 months. And then once you get in there, you're going to have to visit all the field offices around the country. And all of a sudden it's 2028, right? But what they don't know is that Cash Patel already has a top secret security clearance. So they can't stop him from walking in that first day.
Okay. See, do you, okay. How hopeful are you for the next 4 years or even beyond for the FBI under new leadership? Give us, because I think you're a realist, and I really want to know how high should our expectations be for that department, for that agency?
Cautious optimism. You're not going to get everything you want, but I think you have a pretty zealous advocate in Cash Patel who's going to surround himself with guys that are on the team. And I think you're going to need to bring over more people who are uncomfortable with some of the ideas that are going out there. Their default reaction is going to be, Fox News cable lineup says we just need a change at the top. All the good men and women of the FBI, they should just go back to doing the jobs that we all know that they do. And that is wholly inappropriate. And also just a little bit of common sense when it comes to reassigning people or elevating certain people and taking other ones down. I mean, the resumes that I've had a chance to look at within my circle of people who are endeavoring to get into leadership of the FBI management, the upper executive levels, these are people who are filled with such hubris that they are taking their resumes that they've used to promote within a construct that is the FBI that basically self-selects for people whose only capability is promoting within that system. They're not really good at the jobs that they have. They just want to get to the next job, and they self-select people who are of like mind. They're sending those resumes out and they're saying, look, I've been in executive management for the last 15 years. It's like, so, well, you've told me that you have overseen the failures for the last 15 years. You're at fault here, but because you've had a job title, you think that entitles you to something else. And the other thing that you've told me is that you haven't actually done the work of the, quote, good men and women of the FBI for a decade and a half.
I really appreciate you delivering so many facts, but some of them hurt. Some of them hurt more than others. But okay, we'll see how this plays out. Because your life has been turned upside down. You were an FBI whistleblower, and this government, through this Biden administration, has absolutely. And I want to say this for you. I am so sad for you. I'm so grateful for you as an American, but I'm sad for you because there's just no justice. And the way that you've been treated and the effects that this has had on you and other brave individuals and your families, man. What has life been like for you? And when was your testimony, and what has life been like that since you appeared in front of Congress Please enlighten those that may not know the trials that you've been through, man.
I testified publicly May of 2023. That was the last contact that I got from Congress at that point. So, we're now a year and a half past that point.
So you're saying, wait a minute, the stuff that you revealed, you're saying there was no follow-up from any representative's office after the fact?
No, nothing officially. I had a couple of text messages come in from members and just, hey, checking on you, and then no follow-up. And then actually probably the most stalwart amongst all of them isn't even in Congress anymore. That's Matt Gaetz. He actually reached out to us, and now he's not even in a position. There really was a dog and pony show, and I thought they had. I've compared it to the baseball playoff play-in game. It was the Mets and the Braves had a doubleheader going into the playoffs, right?
No. Okay.
And they both had to get one win, right? And lo and behold, it just worked out for them. But when you look at what the Congress had in front of itself, they had to get one win out of two. And the two potential wins were, one, we will bring about the significant reform. We're not just going to expose things. We're not just going to write strongly worded letters and get on cable TV. We're going to actually use the power of the purse to bring about effective change. If you don't do that, at least protect the people that brought it out forward. And they punted on both of them, and they went straight in for the strongly worded letters. Going to get on cable news tonight. I'm going to get reelected on the backs of what people have said, and not even going to have the decency to name it anymore. I mean, they still call us brave whistleblowers. They won't utter our names, and we're very public about what we've done. I mean, when I see it on social media, I normally just put a selfie of myself underneath it whenever one of them says things. So yeah, I did that. Trying to protect my identity is not anything I'm worried about at this point. And you have Marcus Allen, who was brought back to testify again. They're claiming a scalp, a victory for him. He got his security clearance reinstated under the agreement that he was going to resign the next day. And in all of his back pay from 3 years, the FBI didn't pay it to him for over 3.5 months, even after that agreement. So they make everything a punishment. I mean, for me, I'm radioactive professionally at this point. I can't get a part-time security job. I mean, I look overqualified maybe, or you never rule out the fact that a call could have been made. I applied to be a deputy, a frontline entry-level deputy. I'm 39, which would mean I'd be riding a beat at 59 if I wanted to retire that way. So suboptimal conditions, but look, I've got 15 years in law enforcement, figure work for the FBI. I got all this experience. Maybe I'll just take a shot at it. Rejected. Won't hire me in my local county. I mean, this is the
rejected. Why? On what basis?
No further information. We've just decided to go a different direction. And I mean, look, I maybe carry some baggage with them. Sheriff's an elected position. Maybe you worry about that. Maybe they just want somebody who's 24 and 10 feet tall and bulletproof and willing to do things, as opposed to Steve, who's 39 and got kids and maybe looking to coach flag football later on in the evening, as opposed to taking that that second shift or working overtime. So there's all these considerations that are there, but
how good of a shot are you? I bet, is that maybe you had a bad tryout, bad showing at the
I didn't get that far with the sheriff's office, but I did have the unique experience last week of doing training, because I got my private investigator license. Haven't really been able to use it. So, but in order to carry a firearm as a PI, you have to get a certain license, even though Florida is concealed carry. So I had to sit through a class, 2 days of instruction, and then go out to the range and, shot a very high score. And when I say that, I mean, I shot a perfect score, and was admonished afterwards, because this was a group that's class that's taught for security guards. And they said, by shooting well, now if you get into a shooting and go to court, that you're going to be labeled as a trained killer, and you should actually be endeavoring to not look like you're proficient, because it'll be a better defense for you. I mean, my pushback is, like, you're hired to do a job and protect people. Would you prefer me to not be proficient in the use of a firearm? But that's not the way they see it. I mean, they actually articulated to me that security guards are not supposed to take any actions in an emergency situation. Their job is basically just to stand there and let the law-abiding people have this delusion that there is a certain level of security that in fact doesn't exist. And if lead starts flying, get down and escape yourself.
Did y'all hear that? When you see a security guard, just know they are not there expected to protect you. And never mind that absurdity. This great man, you're in the Daytona Beach area, is that right?
Daytona Beach, Florida. Yep.
Do you mind if I just say, hey, if you know someone or if you're based near Daytona Beach and you have a job for an honorable patriot who has been absolutely royally screwed over by this government, please reach. Are your DMs open on Twitter?
DMs are open. Anybody can reach me anytime they want.
All right. At Real Steve Friend. Let me figure out how to get that banner off so they can see. Okay, we gotta. All right. Every time I change graphics, we can't have the damn ding happening. What in the world? That's where that ding came from. So now I hesitate. There it is. At Real Steve Friend. But then I hesitate to show your show because I'm gonna get the ding again, aren't I? No, I guess not. Okay. Well, anyway, follow him on Rumble. Follow his show. There's so much great stuff over there. The American Radicals podcast. Steve, God bless you. Please keep me updated. Would you? Okay, two questions. Two questions for you. Number one, and I don't know if it's a short answer or not. Is it a yes or no? We'll try. Knowing what you know now, would you have come forward as a whistleblower?
Yes. Okay. That was my job. That was my job. I was even having a discussion on the American Radicals podcast today where I said, look, I was a police officer for a bunch of years. I got into fights, and you always wonder when the rubber meets the road, if you're going to go code black and freeze up, or if you're going to be willing to engage in that. I never got involved in a gunfight, officer involved shooting or anything like that. And you still don't know if you'd have it. I said, look, I didn't have that opportunity, but when the pressure was on for this, that was my chance. And if I had frozen up or just kind of curled up into a fetal position, then that would not have been something I could have lived with.
Understood, man. Yeah, you're awesome, dude. And I will say, my follow-up, by the way, before my second question, I see that the ding must be in my head because everyone in the chat is saying that no one's hearing this ding but me. Did you hear it, Steve?
I didn't. I just didn't want to embarrass you.
You just didn't want to embarrass me. Trust me, bro. It's going to take more than that. Okay, so I'm the only one who hears it. Good to know, y'all. My other question for you, Steve, with the sea change in Washington, it's going to roll in about noon Eastern on Monday. And with the hopeful impending advancement of Kash Patel into the director's seat, would you go back to the FBI?
I would do whatever I could to help Kash Patel. If that involved me bringing me back in some capacity, then that would be something I'd entertain. And there's also the family considerations to it as well. The one thing where, I think about what if they just said, hey, do you want your old job back? And going back into the office for the exact same boss that walked me out would be fun for about half a day. But then after that, I think you'd be sort of looking over your shoulder, waiting on the anvil that's dangling off a very thin thread over your head to fall. So as long as you have the protection of the director, it's there. But now that it's very clearly a political position, the 10-year appointment of the FBI director, I think is sort of something we're going to wave bye-bye to. And when Kash Patel gets, you never know. I mean, he could be a Supreme Court justice in 2 years. Who's to say something like that? But I don't think I was put in this position to go back to doing what I really liked to do, because I wouldn't have had all these really weird providential occurrences transpire if I was just supposed to go back to work in regular cases. So if there's any way to advise and continue to adapt and evolve my own thinking, because I want a demolition, but if we make the demo into a reno, it's gonna have to be a complete home makeover.
Okay. Let's see here. Hang on a second. I'm making some notes here, Steve. Hang on a second. And I'm talking with my mouth full at the same time, which is just
your mom would be very disappointed.
She would be, honestly. Okay, so Christopher Wray, outgoing FBI director. Did you watch the 60 Minutes interview the other night?
No, I don't have cable, and I didn't want to inflict that upon myself. But I saw some of the highlights of it, and I basically par for the course for him.
Yeah. So Well, first of all, I know that you have opinions on FBI Director Christopher Wray. First of all, what is his legacy? I guess if you had to sum it up, what would you say Christopher Wray's legacy as FBI Director would be?
Chris Wray's legacy is the censorship of the Hunter Biden laptop story. Like if you could zero it in onto one, if I told you nothing else other than the FBI had Hunter's laptop in their possession and they sent agents out to social media companies to censor that story, to impact a presidential election. And then you can toss on all these other entrapments, the January 6th garbage that's gone on, the 92% application of the FACE Act against pro-lifers. When they step forward and they say, no, we didn't reassign agents from child pornography and human trafficking cases to go spy on parents at school board meetings. That's a verifiable lie. As an image of him sitting in front of the Senate and saying, oh, I got to catch a plane to leave here, and then being allowed to do so to go on vacation. He's not an objective good force. He can't even hide behind well, I was bubble wrapped. All that stuff happened. I just had oversight. I wasn't aware of it. I know he was aware of it. I know my name's been mentioned to him in the meetings because I know people in the meetings.
No.
So this is a guy who's not a good actor here. And for all the labeling of Kash Patel as being politically partisan, I mean, I think you just have to go back, short history lesson. You have Wray, who's overseeing the finality of the weaponization. Before him, you have Andy McCabe, who oversaw Crossfire Hurricane. And then before him, you have James Comey. And James Comey sent agents over to entrap Mike Flynn, who let Hillary Clinton off the hook and then ran the honeypot, which I think we'll probably get to.
Yeah, we got to talk about this.
So it's hardly a nonpartisan bureau at this point. So I think Kash Patel coming in and wearing his biases on his sleeve is probably pretty refreshing, as opposed to being Christopher Wray saying that in his farewell address, Christopher Wray said to the agents and the employees of the FBI that the FBI should not become a political organization, which is a little bit like Neville Chamberlain telling the United Kingdom that they shouldn't make deals with genocidal dictators and then say we have peace in our time.
Honestly, now, if you had said, take us out of this political climate, if you just were flipping through a history book that was telling you the truth, and you didn't assign party or any name or anything, and you just said, oh yeah, let me tell you about this FBI director who he worked with social media companies to silence Americans. He targeted Christians, labeled them as terrorists. He took you, I'm talking about you, Steve. He took FBI agents off of, it was a child sex case, right? To put you on J6 investigations. He abused FISA warrants. I mean, if you just asked a level-headed American, boy, that guy sucks, right? I mean, they would be like, oh my gosh, this guy puts Herbert Hoover, J. Edgar Hoover to shame.
He was asked in a congressional hearing with regard to whistleblowers being unpaid indefinitely if he could go 2 years without being paid, and he laughed. He's a terrible human being who's undoubtedly committed criminal violations of law, even if you want to go down to the fact that he lied to Congress and committed perjury verifiably. He deserves to be in prison. There's no question in my mind about it.
I wanted to ask you your thoughts on that, because I think I saw a tweet. Didn't you have a tweet that said that he ran the FBI like an American Stasi?
Yes, he did. It's a secret police force that uses its powers to go after its perceived enemies. And I think that it's a pretty adequate and appropriate analogy. I sort of connected the dots on this after New Orleans, the attack there, because I think that a lot of people on the political right went to the wrong direction, the wrong solution. But, stopping short of talking about New Orleans, the FBI is Skynet from the Terminator. Now, Skynet is artificial intelligence. It's ones and zeros. It is not good. It is not bad. It just is, right? And Skynet in the story becomes self-aware. It's become sentient. And its prime directive is to protect Skynet from threats. And it comes to the conclusion that the humans are the greatest threat because they can unplug it. So it attacks the humans. It's not evil, right? The FBI is empowered as a bureaucracy, particularly after 9/11, with all of these powers, all these authorities, and the abilities to investigate and prosecute. And if they need to take someone's freedom away, they will. And it is self-aware. It's a government bureaucracy. Success is growth, expanding the budget, expanding the powers, enhancing its abilities and capabilities and personnel. And it came to the conclusion that its enemies of that and of that directive are people who want to bring it to heel and want to limit its abilities. So we're actually at the bottom of the slippery slope now. It's now come after the small government people. We're at the end of the Niemöller poem. First, they came for the trade unionists, and I was on a trade unionist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the socialists, and I was on a socialist, so I said nothing. Then they came for the Jew, and I was on a Jew, so I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. And conservatives have been victims of government weaponization, particularly at the hands of the FBI. For the last 4 years, we've seen it enhanced. And my fear is, particularly after something like New Orleans, they're going to re-rack the Patriot Act all over again and say the FBI made mistakes because they were going after moms at school board meetings and grandmas who walked through the Capitol on J6. And they shouldn't be doing that. They took their eye on the ball. They should be going after those radical Wahhabisms, the radical Islamic terrorists. And that's not correct either. It's a punctuation mistake. The correct answer is the FBI should not be the arbiter of right think and wrong think, and should not be going after moms for their First Amendment protected activity, period. You cannot give it the ability to determine what is right and wrong to believe, because we have a proof of concept. It will use that and eventually, inevitably, get to where it's going after people who are small government minded.
Do you think Donald Trump will go after Christopher Wray in any way whatsoever? And do you even want him to?
Oh, I want him. I want Christopher Wray in solitary confinement at the end of an L-shaped hallway for what he did to my friends' families, my family, to Americans. He oversaw things and then just brushed it off. He has committed significant crimes. But beyond that, if you're in a position of public trust and you use it and abuse it and put people in a cage so that you can either personally enrich yourself or achieve some sort of political end, I think you forfeit your ability to be free in our country. I would be very grateful for Donald Trump to prosecute Christopher Wray. I don't know if he'll get that opportunity. He might get a pardon from Joe Biden at this point, it's going to be to that point. And then I don't think there's an appetite on the right or the Republican Washington, D.C. establishment. We get Bill Barr doing a backflip on his way to the podium saying, we can't have a tit for tat. We're just going to be better than the other side. And the other side does not accept the battlefield that you do.
Right. I mean, look, it's 100%. I could get into hyperbole, but I don't think I need to. You've said facts. And I want to see justice. And I am going to be, like so many people, watching this administration and see if they do seek justice in avenues such as this. Like you said, depending on if there are pardons or not, right? But with each passing day that we don't get that news story or that press release that charges are being brought against people who have clearly committed these crimes, we're going to start to lose hope again in this country, but for a different reason is what I fear. So let's hope that the truth actually does get to sunlight here. Sunlight gets to this truth, because there's a lot of stuff out there that people just aren't aware. And they will learn this stuff, by the way, on the American Radicals podcast on Rumble. Steve Friend over there. Okay, so my goodness. We're going to see some interesting pardons in the next few days, no doubt. It's going to be interesting to see who gets those. Lot to talk about, because a lot has happened. What I like to do I think we've kind of gotten into a rhythm, you and I. You're always teaching us historic stuff, but I think what we've kind of been doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like after the last conversation we have, there are so many FBI blunders or egregious things that come out about the FBI. A case will pop up in the news every couple of weeks. I'm like, oh hell, I got to talk to Steve about that. Oh, I got to talk to Steve about that. Oh, I got to ask him this. So it's been a while since we talked. People probably forgot most of these. A lot of these, I was like, oh yeah, I wrote that down. What was this Houston ISIS case? Did we narrowly avoid some big trouble in one of America's largest cities at the hands of ISIS, Steve?
No, you didn't.
What was that all about? What was
there's so many of them. What's his name again? Because I lose track of them. This isn't the one that flew into Dallas. It's Houston's a different one.
Oh no, I think this was like completely. What was the Houston ISIS one? Because I know when I texted you at the time, like if I go to my texts, you always respond. I'm like, all right, bro, what's this all about? Yeah, I said, let's see, what did you say? Let's see. Here we go. But as I said, are we buying this one? Let's see. Okay, so here's the headline: FBI arrests Houston man for alleged ISIS ties, terror plot on U.S. soil. Authorities said Anas said 28 admitted to bragging he would pull off a 9/11 style attack if he had the resources.
Yeah, and that's it.
If he had the resources. There are tells and stories about the FBI that you have educated us with that you're like, okay, so let me explain if I had the resources.
I would put Christopher Wray in solitary confinement if I had the authority, but I don't, right? And that's just the catch-all with that one. So many of these playbook, I like to call them, are obvious entrapments, but because the actual legal definition of entrapment is incredibly narrow, the FBI skirts that fairly easily. You can't even present a entrapment defense normally. The judges won't let you because they say that, look, law enforcement can deceive you, they can lie, they can manipulate you. But typically what they do is they find a vulnerable person, someone who is a lot of times emotionally disturbed, someone who's young. A lot of times they're actually under 18, angry, they're lonely, they're poor, just down on their luck. And then they introduce the informant, and the informant says, hey, you're my best friend. I'm going to exploit that now, and I'm going to get you to agree to do your worst ideas. And then we introduce an undercover who has exactly what you need because you're not capable of carrying it out. You maybe weren't even predisposed, but even if you were, you weren't capable. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, for just the exact amount of money that you have in your bank account.
I love that. If you've taught us two things, it's number one, here's how you know you're dealing with an FBI informant or agent or whatever. It's because they say, do you have this amount of money to pay for this? I can get it for you. And it's exactly the amount that's in your bank account at that moment, right?
They have already subpoenaed your bank records. They already know how much money you have.
Uh-huh.
And then
the other one is, I'm going to have you repeat this on every time we sit down, bro. It's, remind us what percentage of domestic terrorism cases are because of the FBI instigating them?
94%.
Incredible, man.
From a left-wing news source that is pretty sympathetic to what's gone on and really particularly for over 20 years now within the Muslim community. Talk about how after the New Orleans attack, there were people on the political right who were screaming that, look, this mosque that the terrorists attended, they were represented by CARE. And the mosque was telling people, if the feds come to you and they want to talk to you, say, I'm not talking to you, talk to my attorney from CARE. And all the people on the right were saying, you should be investigating them all. They're all co-conspirators now. And I said, look, excuse me, the last 4 years, I've been telling people, if the FBI comes to your door, close the door and get an attorney. It's the exact same thing. They're just 2 decades in advance because they were targeted way before the people that had a Gadsden flag outside their house.
Right. Oh yeah, look at that. Come at me.
Militia violent extremist symbol.
There it is, y'all. There it is. Okay, so what was the 21-year-old schizophrenic? Was that the election day plot? No, that was separate. What was a schizophrenic 21-year-old kid?
So this is what they love to do. I mean, they find the paranoid schizophrenic people, and then they will try to impression and get them to do their worst ideas. But there was this kid, I believe you're talking about the Nashville one.
Yeah.
So this happened in Nashville. He was communicating with an informant, as it always is. And I've read this in all the charging affidavits. He was communicating with an informant, and he said that he wanted to go do a mass shooting at a YMCA.
Okay.
Well, that sounds serious. You should probably report that to the local authorities, seeing as how that's not a federal crime. That's a state crime. And you would want the police to be there to address that. You don't want the FBI there because they'll be there 6 months from now. You want the 911 to respond. But they didn't do that. The informant brought that to the FBI, and the FBI, instead of alerting local law enforcement, they said, we got one on the hook. So they introduced a second informant. And then they introduced 3 undercover employees. So we roped in 5 extra government agents at this point. And they got this guy in Nashville to change what he wanted to do. He didn't want to do a mass shooting anymore. Now he wanted to bomb a power station. And that wasn't enough. Now he changed it. He said, I want to bring down the electrical grid for the entire country. And I'm going to do it, but I can't do it with just my rifle. I'm going to do it with a drone that I don't know how to build and don't have a possession of and don't know how to fly. I'm going to look it up on YouTube and suggest to my new friends that they 3D print it. And then I'm going to attach 3 pounds of C4, which I can't get because it's under lock and key on a military installation. But apparently one of my buddies can get for me for $100. And then we're going to blow up a power station in Nashville, Tennessee, which will bring the entire energy sector for the continental United States down. And we're going to do this. And we're going to need some operational security. We're going to need to drive a Prius because it's in a suburban area. We're going to need to use latex gloves. We're going to need to pose for pictures together before we do it, of course. And then finally they said, why do you want to do it? And they got him to say, well, because I want to go after the Jews. They said, oh, okay. Well, so now you're a racially motivated violent extremist who wants to carry out a vicious attack. So we're going to charge you with terrorism. He's a schizophrenic, crazy person who has no idea what's going on. And he's so dumb that they were able to pull him into this fake plot and they could hit him with a terrorism charge. Not defending the guy. I don't want to be his friend. Yeah. But he should have been reported to local law enforcement as a potential mass shooter. Meanwhile, while they were carrying out this plot for 6 months, what if he just got a gun and went to the YMCA?
And they could have done something with him sooner. I mean, right?
Well, I mean, the FBI's track record of dealing with terrorists would be they would have allowed that to happen.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, you had the Draw Muhammad competition where you had the FBI agent in the parking lot watching those guys go in to do the shooting and not involving himself and driving away.
Yeah. That's Dallas. So, but let's go back to the Nashville thing for a second. Boy, that looks really good, spectacular on a press release that the FBI stops a man from, and then you get the double whammy. You get to go after 3D printing. He wanted to 3D print a drone with C4 and bring down our electrical grid. And thank goodness FBI agents rode to the rescue and stopped him just in time. Never mind, they were grooming him for 6 months, and making.
But they don't even give you that information. They say the FBI thwarted a white supremacist plot to conduct a bombing. All of that's accurate, according to what they were able to get him to admit to.
Yeah, no, that's good. Oh my goodness, man. How can anyone who knows this information about law enforcement at the federal level have any kind of faith in this government? And that's why starting Monday, it's so important that we have a massive sea change. And it's very important that this ship turn 180 degrees around, because this is out of control. You are ruining people's lives. You are risking people's lives. You are costing people's lives while you are sitting here trying to justify your very existence. What was the election day plot? That was separate than this. I'm sorry. I got those two. For some reason, I mixed those together.
There was an election day plot for, again, this individual. I believe he was out of Oklahoma. and was with
Yeah.
a son, and the whole thing was they're gonna do an election day plot. But the timing of it was pretty curious, and if you know, you know. They wind up doing a similar sort of entrapment on this individual where he's gonna he's going to sell his computers to an informant, and the informant's like, well, what are you going to use the money for? I need to buy firearms. Oh, I can sell you my firearms, right? So it's a complete setup job. But to me, the most interesting part was the timing. The arrest happened on October 7th of 2024. Now, in the lead up to October 7th, 2024, there were all these cautionary statements from the FBI about there's going to be a high risk of an attack to coincide with October 7th for the Hamas attack on Israel. And anniversary dates don't matter to terrorists. They only matter to the analysts inside the FBI to justify their existence, to write their term papers. So the arrest happened on October 7th. His plot was for November 5th, election day, that as it was represented in the takedown. But they perfectly timed the arrest to say that, see, look, we stopped a terrorist attack on October 7th, and hope that nobody connected the dots that the election threat was there. And then it also gave them an extra talking point for threats on election day, because they could say, look, we've already thwarted one terrorist. The polling stations might not be the safest place for you. Maybe you ought to stay home and mail in your votes.
Oh, bro, I swear it never ends with them. Okay, I've got a long list of these, bro. I mean, it's long. What about the July 4th fireworks case? What was that all about?
So this one was pretty recent. It's in Eastern Virginia, Eastern District of Virginia, reliable statist district of court where they'll charge everyone. So the circumstances here are an informant came to the FBI and said that I have some fresh meat for you. This guy he has a mangled hand from homemade explosive devices. Parenthetically, that was a firework from July 4th. He mangles hand with, and he makes his own ammunition. He makes about 50 rounds a day. So I've got friends who would say he needs to step up his game, but maybe having a mangled hand hurts him on that. So they have the informant befriend this individual, become his shooting buddy for over a year. Actually gets to almost 2 years, during which time he reports back that, hey, we go shooting. This guy, he's got a go box. A go box, according to the informant and according to the affiant, who was a task force officer from the Suffolk Police Department, says that a go box is a box that he has that has food and water and medical supplies and ammunition and firearms in case of an emergency, which indicates that he's a radical, extremist, anti-government type, right? So sometime in the 2 years where they're shooting buddies, because they're buddies, he says, yeah, I've got this rifle, and basically admits that I don't have it registered. It's a short barrel rifle, and because we don't exist in a free country anymore, the ATF goes after you for not registering your SBR. They wait so long, they go to the ATF. The ATF says, yep, it's not registered. They wait another year and then have to go back to the ATF to make sure that it's not registered. Verify, yep, it's not registered. The guy says, I don't believe in registering my rifle because I'm American. And this is being investigated by the Joint Terrorism Task Force because he's a terror subject. They flashbang his house, 6 o'clock in the morning, and arrest him for having an unregistered short barrel rifle. Send the SWAT team in. It's a $200 tax stamp. But for 2 years and probably over $1 million, when you think about the expense of it, for manpower, and all this, for a tax stamp.
The crime was
what it's about.
Tax stamp.
It's about they had to keep an open terrorism investigation of a white supremacist, I'm sure he was labeled, or some sort of anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremist. He's a 266 Oscar. Justify having the case open. Now we have an arrest.
And now you have a statistic, a talking point for liberal politicians to say, are you aware how many white supremacist terror plots that we have, our federal law enforcement agents have taken down just in the past year alone? You have blah, 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 blah. Or he could just throw out a number, this politician could. And these are the cases that they're referring to. This is madness, man. Okay. All right. How about the what was the stock market bombing plot? What was that all about?
It was just, if my memory serves, it was another emotionally disturbed person who they brought down because he said he wanted to take down the stock market, but like had never been to New York.
That is awesome. Okay. Let's see. What was the one about the FBI arrested a man on a plane? Guess he had an issue or something. Oh
yeah,
no,
this one's sickening. And it's not a terrorist one. I guess it's technically some sort of a threat of a bomb. But this guy was on a plane with his buddy and clearly had an anxiety attack. So reading through the charging document, he was saying things like, he must have been like on a puddle jumper type of airline, like a discount, and got nervous about flying on this plane that, Spirit Airlines made
those
look.
Will test you. Those will test you. I back in the early 90s, I used to fly back and forth between Denver and Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And
Sure.
You fly on one of those things, you're sitting next to the window.
Scottsbluff, Nebraska is so barren that the FBI took their one-man office out of there. There wasn't enough stuff going on. But that's my old division. But this guy, he's on the plane with his friend, and he starts saying things like, I don't think that this plane is going to make it. I think we're going to crash. And he got a lot of people nervous. So they basically told him, hey, you need to shut your mouth. They go to take off, they get into the air, and then he loses it. He tries to stand up. I need to get off. And they restrain him, hold him down. And then he says, my friend has a bomb. And he's clearly saying that because he wants the plane to land so he can get off. And anybody who's had a claustrophobic attack or a moment of anxiety from that, which I've had happen to me one time where I was in a hazmat suit, like full on, and it just couldn't breathe. Right. I remember I had enough. So I went to it was a training iteration, and I went to the instructor and I basically said, I'm freaking out right now. I need to get this helmet off my head. And, I didn't have any issues ever again. I've worn them in the future. It was just sort of this weird one-off. So I don't know if maybe he had a history of this or not. He's charged now with bomb on an airplane threats. He's going to prison for a couple of years. Now, should he be held accountable financially? Maybe some sort of a fine, expense to the airline, inconvenience to the passengers. But he didn't go there with that intent. But he lands and the FBI says, oh, we have an opportunity to jam him up and say that he was threatening to blow up an airplane. And they did it. And that's just not in keeping with what you would expect from people who are vetted as having integrity.
Your government at work. Am I right? Okay. What, and I'm going to put you on the spot here on this one. Because I don't think we've ever talked about Larry Nassar in Team USA gymnastics and the heinous things that he did in his role as the team doctor. Walk somebody like me through, if you can. What were the failures there on the FBI? What all went on, and how long did that go on? It's just something I wanted to bring up, because I feel like if you want to connect to people, right, and you want to talk to them about how not only inefficient is a kind word. If you want to explain to them how just absolutely derelict the Federal Bureau of Investigations is, you could point to this one, yeah? And they can connect on this, because you're talking about, these are our sweethearts every 4 years that we root for and we watch on TV. What was happening to them and our FBI dropped the ball on?
It cost them over $100 million afterwards. It cost you and me over $100 million. So the complaint came in to an agent, I believe in Indianapolis, that Larry Nassar wasn't doing this sort of thing. Now, not a federal crime unless there's certain sorts of measures met. Should be referred to a local agency to carry forward an investigation. This agent took the case up, and he wound up going to, because it's more of a high profile sort of allegation being made, right? Works its way up through middle management to executive leadership in that field office. An executive leader in that field office said, I will handle this. Don't worry about it. Take it off your plate. Now, the FBI later came back and said that that was a mistake by that agent. They should have called up locals themselves, but took it in good faith that the boss would handle it. That boss wanted to get a job, was in the running to get a job for the U.S. Olympics team or committee or gymnastics. He wanted a job.
I did not know that.
Setting that up for himself, so he buried the story.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And then when this all came out, he was allowed to retire. He didn't get the job for clear reasons with the U.S. Olympic Committee, but he didn't get prosecuted. He still has his retirement. He's getting paid every 2 weeks. That golden eagle is crapping in his bank account every 2 weeks. Thank you for your honorable service, sir. But guys like Garrett O'Boyle have been unpaid for 28 months.
I feel for you guys.
And then those girls, they're never getting made whole.
No,
and when you break down the number of victims and the lawyers' fees and all that, I mean, maybe they make a couple of $1 million. Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many victims there were on this, but you contrast it with the fact that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, part of the lovebirds for the Crossfire Hurricane case.
Yeah.
They were sending some pretty explicit text messages to each other about trying to do election interference, and then also how they were having an affair on the side. And Peter Strzok, side note, was so cheap he wouldn't even spring for a hotel room. They were doing the nasty in a car. But those messages were happening on a government phone, which when you get a government phone, you sign this whole agreement that nothing there is private. That is all property of the U.S. government, property of the U.S. taxpayers. And those messages were leaked. So they wound up leaving, getting fired or resigning. I think Lisa Page resigned. Peter Strzok got fired. Happened during the Trump administration. Biden administration comes in. They immediately settle with Lisa and Peter and pay them both $1 million for intrusions into their privacy.
Incredible. I can't. I mean, like, how is it? I just, you are such an honorable man. If I were in your shoes, I would be so angry and so bitter. And maybe you are, and I'm not asking you to address that, but I'm saying I wouldn't be able to even see straight, man. I'd be so angry, pissed off all the time. I'd be like, somebody's got to pay. This is bullshit. I mean, this is.
Haven't slept very much, but I'm nothing if not consistent where I stand on things. You know, Lisa Page was a victim in another case of the FBI. She's going to get paid out more. And I think she actually should. Lisa Page and I agree on probably nothing, except that when a U.S. Marine was discharged because he was emotionally disturbed and started to stalk her and actually located her, and this had been reported to the FBI, who took no action. He wound up at her door with her child in the doorway because the FBI didn't do anything about it. I think she should be paid out for that.
Yeah, I mean, everything on its own individual merits, right? And
yeah.
That sounds, I tell you, how much faith do you have in your government as a whole? May I ask?
I am trying to scale back my actual purview, what I'm focusing on, because you know you're in it every day too, so it's just overwhelming. And
yeah, but I'm not a victim like you, man. And I didn't stick my neck out like you. Please, I mean, with all due respect, don't compare me to, or don't even, you know what I'm saying? Like, you are, I can't even imagine what you go through. But anyway, continue. I'm sorry.
No, just my perspective is really, I try to silo it into
I
where my
understand.
lane is at this point.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And what I don't think you can have any hope in the way that the agency is constituted, just because of a couple factors that are not even just nefarious. I'm talking about just being not capable of doing a job. You look at the leadership and the management and the structure, it is a construct. It is a system that is made to select people who are not capable people. They're people who are solely interested in promoting, solely motivated to get to the next rung on the ladder. And they self-select other people like them into those roles. And because of this bias that we have, this prejudice that we have towards people who have a impressive resume, they can say, oh, I was a unit chief over this initiative, and I was a section chief over here, and I was an assistant director over here, as opposed to being like, oh, so you're telling me you were in leadership of an agency that has failed everywhere for the last decade? Instead, they say, well, you're uber qualified. Whereas the logical thing to me is, let's look around the room and say, who's an agent that's been around for 10 or 12 years? That guy could run that field office. He knows how to work cases. He can manage personnel. I mean, like I worked in the FBI Omaha field office, 70 agents between Iowa and Nebraska. That's not massive. That's not like asking me to be Pete Hegseth and running the Pentagon, right? I think that you can get capable people who are experienced investigators to just have to step up. Next man up needs to be it, until we're able to get to a point where we say, yes, that's reasonable, as opposed to just looking for the person with the resume, because we just take the resume on its face of it looks impressive.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have any expectations of any major changes.
So this might be a segue here. Who is Jeffrey Veltri, and why should we know who he is? And what are your thoughts on him?
Jeffrey Veltri has a long backstory that I think your audience will probably really appreciate or really get angry about. So currently, Jeffrey Veltri is a special agent in charge of Miami. Prior to that, he was leading the security division for the FBI, which is under the Human Resources Division, which is the arm that suspended my clearance. All the whistleblowers' clearances were suspended. Jeffrey Veltri is on record as saying things like military veterans are probably disloyal to the country. We should target them to have their security clearances be removed because they're right of center. Also, people who have lots of children because they're probably religious. People who attend religious worship ceremonies are probably right of center. We need to get rid of them. People who were resistant to getting the coronavirus vaccine, we need to oust all of them. Now, Jeffrey Veltri is a commie, so he's unashamed about that, and he has really terrible operational security for somebody who endeavors to climb the ladder. So that's why Jeffrey Veltri went onto his Facebook account and was putting out all this anti-Trump vitriol on there. So Jeffrey Veltri gets selected naturally for promotion to take over the FBI Miami field office. And before he did that, you have Christopher Wray, director, Paula Bate, deputy director, Jennifer Moore in charge of human resources, who has also lied to Congress in dealing with whistleblowers. I have the transcripts, verifiable lies. They all tell Jeffrey he needs to clean up his Facebook account before he gets promoted, and then they send him on down to Miami. And he's in charge of the office that has oversight of the Mar-a-Lago assassination attempt.
Huh. Now we're cooking.
No progress on that one, unsurprising to anyone who knows Jeffrey's background.
Wow, I tell you, it is so incestuous, and it's the nastier kind of person you are, the higher you're gonna vault in this agency. And
Screw
maybe
up,
it's true
move
for
up.
every screw up, move up. Maybe that's true for every federal agency. I don't know, but it sure feels that way in the FBI. Okay, and again, we hope that things improve 100% with Kash Patel. But you were on with Benny Johnson before Christmas, and you said something there that was very intriguing about how you deduced, I guess. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I thought it was still cunning the way you figured out that clearly the Biden FBI, the Christopher Wray FBI, was spying on Kash Patel. How did you come to that conclusion?
Because the FBI has that capability, and they have they
Full
have
stop, right?
yeah. They actually wrote it down in their policy guides, right? If let's look at it from a counterintelligence perspective, right? Like if you are a potential, we'll say, victim of an espionage case, right? Let's say somebody in China is reaching out to Keith.
Okay.
And we find out about it because we have Section 702. We're monitoring their communications. But let's just say just because
Thanks for looking out for me, Fed.
Because of your position, you might have access to information that might be of interest to the Chinese government. So we want to come to you and say that you're vulnerable. Here are your vulnerabilities. We need to brief you up on them, things to be on the lookout for. We would hate for you to be coerced or co-opted by our enemies. But when that happens, the FBI can open a full counterintelligence investigation on you as the victim, because we have to find out about you to find out where you're vulnerable. We get access to everything.
Is this Patriot Act residue here?
You know, the origins of it are, I don't know. I just know it's called Appendix G. It's in the Domestic Investigations Operations Guide.
Okay.
But because they have that capability to monitor your electronic communications, they have a full counterintelligence investigation of you. And under the premise of you're potentially the victim, we can just have a person, and now we have our man, and we can go look for a crime because we get access to his financial documents, can really get expansive into how we look at them. So they could totally abuse that. But when those emails got leaked, it was pretty clear they have a full counterintelligence investigation of Kash Patel.
The emails that Iran.
Sure,
right.
Because the Iranians are being monitored via FISA 702. We look at state-sponsored actors and are able to intercept their communications and then backtrack. And this is the hack around 702, which the disturbing things that we're seeing now, even at these confirmation hearings, where you see like Pam Bondi talking about how she's okay with FISA 702, and even Tulsi Gabbard saying she's come around on that. You work backwards. You say, look, there's a Russian 702 means a foreign person who is representing a state when they're abroad in Russia. Well, we're monitoring them, and then they're communicating with you, Keith. So now we have to open up a full counterintelligence investigation on you. And we know they're communicating with you because we look at their emails. Now, a couple of elements of this that I think are worth pointing out and how ripe this is for abuse. I don't know about you, but I pretty regularly get email solicitations from Russia today. Will you come on to talk to us? They try to hide who they are, but I can do a little bit of discerning and say, oh, that's RT. I don't even have to open the email. I can just delete it. But that's a communication electronic from a state-sponsored actor. They can open a full CI case on me now for as long as they want to keep their eye on me. Let's take it a step further. Now, there are relationships that are cultivated. Who's to say that the federal government can't call up somebody over at RT who's actually on Team America? Hey, I've got a spook. I'm a spook, and I've got a source in RT, and they're my asset, and they're providing me things. Hey, while you're working today, can you send an email over to Steve Friend so I can open a case on him too?
Oh my gosh. It's nobody's communications are safe from this government.
No. And we've given them these abilities, and we've given them the directive because they're now the arbiter of wrongthink to pick their targets, and they do.
I see a good question here from Miss Phantom Fan. I want to. So I think Donald Trump and Kash know about this guy Veltri heading to Miami office, and maybe that's his first official act as FBI director if he gets confirmed, huh?
I know Kash does because I told him.
Okay. All right, good.
But you know,
I'm actually
the stories are legion about all these people within executive management. There's no shortage of these types of people who are just we call them blue flamers because they're like a rocket that's going up, so it's burning so hot that the flames are blue, right? They're just claiming rung after rung after rung on that ladder all the way up to the top of the pyramid. And they are all either just dyed in the wool communists, which I can say I've seen, or they're just corrupt people, or they're compromised. They have other things on them, so they'll just follow orders. I mean, the predecessor for Jeffrey Veltri down in Miami was George Pirro. George Pirro, he actually got demoted to that spot. The reason he got demoted was because he was involved in sexual activity of the oral nature with a subordinate in a bureau vehicle. So when he was sent down to Miami, and then the counterintelligence squad in Washington, D.C. called Miami and said, we want to execute a full search warrant with the hostage rescue team at Mar-a-Lago for classified documents in direct opposition to what their superior had told them to do, where he said a consent search is enough. They said, no, we want the full shebang. George Pirro was not in a position to push back on that, because even if they were going to do a search warrant, you would think the special agent in charge of Miami would say, that's my territory. This is my chance to get off the bleep list here. This is my career. I could really enhance it. I'm going to go after the Orange Hitler. And he said, no, you can have that, Washington, D.C. He didn't push back at all.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, I just, every time I talk to you, I have more and more faith in my government. No, I saw something come across here from Miss Carol. Okay. All right. She's been resisting registering for TSA pre-check, even though the rest of her family has done so. I think my decision to resist is 100% the right move. What's your take on help either calm her fears or confirm them?
They already have everything they need anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, that's just the reality of where we live.
I was about to say, I don't like waiting in line, so don't ruin this for me. But you're right. Aha, they have everything anyway, Miss Carol. Go for pre-checks.
I mean, it's a little like you don't want your picture taken when you're showing them the ID. You know, you're showing them your ID. They have a picture of you.
Yeah, there you go. Okay. What's this honeypot operation against the Trump team that FBI Director James Comey had going? What was that all about?
Well, this was the most underreported story of 2024. I mean, you can make the case Butler, Pennsylvania was probably the most underreported, the way it just went down the memory hole. But at least we have images of Trump pumping his fist, right?
Yeah.
So Carrie Pickett, who's a writer over for the Washington Times, broke the story. A whistleblower came forward, said that during Trump's campaign in 2016, James Comey, director of the FBI, ordered an off the books, so no record of it. It wasn't being documented. He off the books honeypot scheme, which is where they send in the women to go and seduce the men to get the dirt. He sent two.
Is that even allowed where they can do something like this off the books? Okay, I wanted to make sure.
Well, off the books is not allowed, and honeypots are not allowed.
Understood. Oh yeah, I understand that, but I just want to make sure. Is there any statute, anything that says, look, use your discretion here, and we'll clean up the pieces later? Just making sure. Just to make sure. Okay.
Nope, not allowed. He sent 2 undercover agents, female, into the Trump campaign to engage in sexual activity to dig up dirt on Donald Trump so they could charge him with a crime. And the entire plot came crashing down because one of the agents was photographed by media. Media was going to run the story, and the FBI caught wind of it, and they called up the media, said, we have to spike the story. You can't publish that picture because that's an informant whose life will be in danger if you publish that picture. So they at least spiked the picture. Meanwhile, it's an actual employee of the government, a W-2 agent. And they reassigned that agent to the CIA so that she couldn't be called as a witness. And the other female they pulled and they promoted her. She's now a high-level executive and the upper echelon of management of the FBI.
we got to start doing these Thursday deep dives with you on something else. I mean, like, do you have hobby? Like, do you fly fisher? Like, do you do anything that we could do a deep dive on? Because when I get you in here about the FBI, my blood boils. I should not be checking my blood pressure after these conversations. I love you dearly, but boy, this stuff pisses me off. Okay, so FBI. I don't know if you saw this. They warned iPhone and Android users you should be texting each other. Do you know what that was about? Did that? I didn't ask you about that.
I mean, my default is that there was some sort of regulatory effort I know about iPhone was purposely making it difficult, or I think there were these senators and Congress people are just so technologically deficient that they were angry that if on my iPhone I text somebody with a Samsung and it's green and you're doing that to me on purpose. And I mean, Apple's under no obligation to make it easier to communicate with people who don't use an Apple product. And I when I saw that, I sort of defaulted to this seems like we're just now going to use law enforcement to get involved because some senator doesn't want to see green.
That is, I bet that. Okay. I bet you're right. Okay. Let's talk about New Orleans, shall we? The terrorist attack in the early morning hours of January 1st. I was like, the second I saw the reporter inside the residence of the suspected terrorist, Jabbar, I thought, what the hell? We've never, ever gotten a tour like this. Not a week later, not a month later, sure as hell not like 2 hours later. I knew we had this scheduled. I said, I've got to ask Steve about that. Talk to me. When you saw that, what was your takeaway, man?
A couple thoughts. But wait, we have had that happen, but I'll get back to that in a second.
Okay.
So just looking at that, I have a journalist friend who inquired as to how that was allowed to happen. And the FBI actually said that we did the search warrant. We turned the property back over to the manager or the owner of the property, and they allowed the media in there, which is ridiculous. They didn't even secure the door. The search warrant that was executed, I guess they didn't have the A team with them, maybe because they were all hungover from January 1st. Because they didn't seem to collect the bomb making materials or the electronics or any sort of indicators there, which would have been ideology, maybe the Quran that was open to a chapter on martyrdom or some of his other accoutrements there. And the FBI actually does a really good job of cleaning up after a search warrant, and they had not done it there. And to me, though, the access that the media got that jumped out to me in San Bernardino, remember, I think it was 2015.
Yep.
They gave media access to that almost immediately.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And what got me thinking about that was at the time then they wanted access to the iPhone that the terrorists used there. And Apple said, no, you can't have this skeleton key. It's a personal privacy issue going forward. We can't even for this one situation. And you had all the big R Republicans saying like, screw your freedom and we need security, right? And we want to give it to them. I think it's something similar to that. I think they wanted to put a media narrative on this to keep pushing for, we need access. We need access because this guy was a bad actor. Or who else was he talking to? We don't know. And I think that they're going to try to fold this into enhancing some sort of Patriot Act, maybe even push forward the Going Dark initiative, which they were even pushing after Butler last year, where they said, we want to have real-time current monitoring abilities on encrypted communications, encrypted messaging services. We want the skeleton key. And Lindsey Graham sat up there with a very choreographed conversation with Paula Bates saying, like, I'm all for free speech, but we got to have limits here, folks.
I'm not doing anything wrong. Why do I care?
Yeah.
Okay. So
Lindsey Graham wants backdoor access to everything. Pun intended.
Talk to us about the Going Dark thing you just casually mentioned there. That sounds like something we should have on our radar as Americans.
I mean, this has been since Comey days. They want Anything encrypted, they want the ability to look at it and not backwards. Not we send a subpoena or a search warrant off, we get your communications, which would be an intrusion on an encrypted app. It is real time, like wiretapping abilities of encrypted communications that they feel like that they're entitled to and they should have. And they've tried to characterize these as being nefarious. It's very much like cryptocurrency. Well, it's used by drug dealers. Well, encrypted communications are used by bad guys. It's a tool. Any tool can be used for bad, which is why people seem to understand that with firearms, that it's not the gun that does it. It's the person operating the gun. It's not the lock on the door when you put somebody into a prison cell in your house and kidnap them. It doesn't make it that locks are bad. I lock my car because there's valuables in it. But they're going to make that case that these communications need to be available for access to the government.
And so are they going to go after each individual app, or is this going to be a blanket law? Are we going to do this through statute? What do you think?
Oh, I think that they never look for a case-by-case basis. It'll be a broad, wide-sweeping sort of ability, and they'll probably try to put it in. I think there's enough civil libertarians out there now, people who really saw how bad the Patriot Act was. It'll be part of an NDAA or something like that, that one of those national defense authorization bills. They'll try to sneak it in there like they did with the whistleblower stuff in there. I believe it was the NDAA that got passed, and they put in statute in there that I read it because I was lured to actually by a colleague of yours over at the Blaze, Daniel Horowitz, said something's wrong here, and read it and basically said if you read it, it's if you brought forward concerns about something that you might be afoul of the law. It was this. I'm sorry, it wasn't NDAA. It was the 702 renewal. Basically, whistleblowing about these matters to Congress might put you afoul of the law.
I just, the information that you provide really pisses me off a lot. Okay, well, I want to just, I want to talk about J6 real quick with you. As I mentioned earlier, you were working on a case, correct me if I'm wrong, a child sex trafficking case back when J6 occurred, and you were taken off of your important case to investigate J6ers. Stop me if I get anything wrong. And if I don't think I knew this before the 60 Minutes thing, then just in passing, as they were setting up the J6 topic with Christopher Wray on Sunday night. It was set up as the largest FBI operation in our nation's history. And I thought, this can't be, what the hell? What kind of terrorist threats, what kind of child sex abuse incidents are happening while these agents for the entirety of the Biden administration have been spending so much time on J6ers? I just kind of wanted your thoughts on that, but mostly I wanted to ask you what your thought was on pardoning J6ers. So I rolled up a lot in there for you, Steve. You were on a child sex trafficking case when J6 investigations came calling, correct?
So when J6 happened, I was actually investigating Indian reservations, but it transferred over the summer, was working on child exploitation cases when I was reassigned. And it wasn't just one case. I mean, that was my assignment, was to investigate only those types of cases. So I had a whole slew of them that I was working on. Reassigned to work on the Joint Terrorism Task Force. No work to do on those cases at the time. They were all J6 cases. They had all already been worked to in the extent that they had done interviews and collected evidence. They were sitting in Washington, D.C. for Washington, D.C. to tell us what to do on our own cases. So that's a departure that I talked to Congress about. That's not supposed to happen. And the reason that it happened was they opened a separate case for every single person as opposed to one case with however many bad actors you want to do. And they did that so that they could, on paper, open those cases around the country because the person lived in Daytona. So now it's a Daytona case that they actually don't have control over, but it creates that giant map. And we're going to label them all domestic terrorism cases, even though the vast majority of them are not even labeled the way that cases are organized in the FBI. They're not even terrorism cases. They're criminal cases. They're parading, rioting cases.
Right.
But the FBI still calls them terrorism. And some of them they do actually label as terrorism. The anti-government extremists. And they've all labeled them as racially motivated violent extremists, white supremacists. And it is the largest investigation in the FBI because they've been able to create all these cases out of thin air, hit their quotas, get their bonuses for 4 years now. They devoted so much man hours to it. And part of the quotas is how many man hours you put onto any sort of violation. They overburned on it so that they were actually at risk of coming in under the numbers they needed for international terrorism cases like Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, Taliban, that sort of stuff. They were at risk of not doing that. So they had to actually tell agents to lie on their timesheets and devote more hours on paper, even though they're working nothing but J6, to, on paper, international terrorism cases, which is a felony. That's lying on a federal document. Happens all the time in the FBI. This is the largest investigation in the history of the Bureau, without question. When J6 happened, there were people who were saying, this is our 9/11. And they did not mean it in the context of this case was as important as 9/11, really. There was not a death toll like 9/11 at all. But it was like 9/11 was in 2001 for those people who promoted off of it. This is their chance to promote. They threw everything they had at it. 1,583 people were arrested as of last week. I know that there have been more people who actually reported to prison this week for January 6th. It is not going to stop. There was reporting that they were going to hit the brakes now after the election. They've continued to open up more cases.
Faster pace.
They have had more arrests in the last year than they did in the prior year.
Yeah.
And look, when I came forward, I said, Steve, you can't object to these because we're going to start expanding the net, not to people who were in the Capitol. It's going to be people who stood on the outside, and they've done that.
It's
now to the pardon question.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of camps within the J6 community, right? That and people who have done their time already, served, versus people who are facing charges, people who did violent activity, and people who just stood on the lawn, right? Here's where I come down. The mission of law enforcement is to follow the process. Winning and losing at trial is completely irrelevant. You gather the facts if there's reasonable suspicion of a crime, and then if there is probable cause to make an arrest, you make the arrest. And then when it goes to trial, that person has their day in court. Did you meet your burden? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt that this person committed that crime? And it has its day in court. Whether or not you win or lose is not up to you. Your victory is you follow the process. Due process is a thing. The FBI, the Department of Justice, have not followed due process on a single one of these cases. They all get to walk. And the example that I use when I talk about this is Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby sexually assaulted a multitude of young women. He drugged them and sexually assaulted them. And then when he got investigated, the district attorney made a deal. It was a civil case. He said to Bill Cosby, behind closed doors, tell me what happened in this civil matter, and I will not use it against you at criminal trial. And Bill Cosby did it. And then the district attorney's office used that against him at criminal trial. And Bill Cosby appealed based on that, and he won, and he deserved to win. It is not the fault of Bill Cosby in that situation. The fact that those women didn't get justice. The fact that those women didn't get justice is on the government because they didn't follow the process. They failed those women, and they will not get justice. That's what happened in that case, and that's what should happen in all these blanket pardons for everyone. And that's not enough. Anyone who use this to personally enrich themselves, who abuse their positions of authority to subvert constitutional protections and due process rights, deserves to lose their freedom.
Yeah, well said. I agree 100%. 100% on this. I mean, the well is poisoned, and there was just individual injustices done to these people. But it goes back to what you said. The entire process was tainted. Yeah, this is post haste, before the sun sets on January 20th. I want to see these pardons. I know that's not going to happen, but I sure as hell hope it does. Can I just go back just for a moment here? I want to ask you something on a personal level. You said you were investigating these child sex cases. Um, what does looking at that evidence and being a part of those kind of operations, what what does that do to your soul, man? Like what did that do to you? How long were you involved with those investigations?
Well, I did the Indian reservation cases, which involved actually a lot of child sexual abuse too. It's like hands on.
Okay.
So that's one thing. But the child pornography cases where you have to watch all of
Right, right.
everything,
Oh
that you
gosh.
have. And there are studies that have been done and arguments been made that people get PTSD from it little by little at a time. And this is you want to talk about one of the mistakes and the real losses that the FBI had. Um, and I'll even compare it to something else that's completely unrelated. You know that there is a smaller percentage of people who pepper spray doesn't affect, and there's an even smaller percentage of people who tasers have no impact on at all. There are a small percentage of people who watching that doesn't impact, and I'm one of them.
Oh,
It's not pleasant. I don't want to watch it. I mean, if I
uh-huh.
did, I'd be a pedophile myself.
Mhm.
But I was able to always compartmentalize that sort of thing and say, look, that's evidence. It's like a homicide detective looking at a murder scene. Some people can't look at that. It just grosses them out. They don't want to have those images in their head. And homicide detectives just go in and do their job. I was able to do that. And between the working hours I was there, this is what I'm going to do. It is a way to put the worst people in prison. If that's what I have to do, then that's what I'll do. And
Mhm.
they took me off of that. And they said that wasn't a priority. Most people, just thinking about it, don't even want to even think about it, which is why we have a problem writ large nationally from a law enforcement perspective with these issues, because people don't want to think about that.
Yeah.
There's no appetite for it, and it's way under resourced. People want to have the arrest and the big press statement where they all stand up there and pat themselves in the back and they put all the drugs on the table, right?
Yeah.
Oh, they took down the big Sinaloa cartel. They don't want to even have the press release that comes out and says, we got this low life with 45,000 videos on his hard drive. Just
Hmm.
would rather not think about it. And as a result, we don't address it, and we give people a way out of law enforcement. And I think we need to fundamentally rethink that. I mean, we right now ask people two questions basically: will you carry a firearm? Will you use force if it is necessary? If you're willing to do that, then you can sort of get your foot in the door, maybe of a career of law enforcement. The third question that must be asked is, will you work child exploitation? If you're not willing to do that, I don't think that you should be in law enforcement. We need all hands on deck for this.
Yeah.
And right now you can beg out and say, look, I can't handle it. But dealing with those sorts of cases, I looked at it as a means to an end to get the worst people. And for the brief time that I got a chance to do that, it was very rewarding.
Well, God bless you, man. Um, there was something I want to go back to the. I think it was the fireworks guy who blew off part of his hand or something. You were talking about earlier, made his own ammunition. I want to ask you something on that case that I forgot to originally. Um, wasn't he also the guy who was doing target practice of pictures of Joe Biden? Is
Yeah.
that okay? So here's my question. Um, I think I know what the answer should be. but I want to make sure because it's 2025 and God knows what's legal and not. But if that was the only evidence, right? Like, let's just say, okay, we go to a shooting range, you and I. If we walk up there and we see a guy shooting and his target is Joe Biden's face, I think that's tacky. I don't like it. I don't care who the president is on there. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see anybody's face. That's why it's a silhouette. Please tell me that is still legal in America. Or does that open an investigation on you?
That's a great question. In the alleged land of the free, it's 100% legal. I can't guarantee you that you're not going to have a case opened up on you because the FBI has the ability to, through the Patriot Act, open what is called an assessment, which is an investigation of any American for an, and I quote, articulable purpose. Not probable cause or reasonable suspicion.
Right, I was about to say that.
Just articulable, like just reasons. That's basically what that means.
The word assessment, it sounds almost like this net, this wide net here.
Free speech, it has been adjudicated in the Supreme Court. You have to have a true threat, right? Which means you have the means to do it. It has to be imminent and directed in your language. It is 100% legal by a First Amendment standard in this country to say, I want to shoot the president. I've not said anything directive. I've not given you a place, a location, how I'm going to do it. Supreme Court. I mean, look, there was a very famous case about the Vietnam War, and the individual was drafted, and he said, if they put a rifle in my hand, I'm going to point it at LBJ. That is First Amendment protected. But we investigate First Amendment protected activity all the time. Despite what the FBI says in its caveat that it doesn't, it 100% does.
But that case about the rifle and LBJ, he got off on that. Like, he did not have to.
And it wasn't a 9-0 decision, which is probably the most disturbing fact.
Okay. Interesting. All right. And okay. Boy, it's like history with you. We learned so much here. Okay. I know that you've commented on Ross Ulbricht. Could you please freshen memories or educate people on him and why you think he should be pardoned?
Ross Ulbricht was the founder of the Silk Road, which was the dark net exchange that people were using to sell goods to each other. And some of it was illicit. Some of it was weapons and drugs and all that. And there was a case opened up on him. And eventually, as it was presented, he vocalized, or at least typed out, that he wanted to get a hitman to get rid of somebody, right? And as a result of that, they brought the hammer down on him for that, but it was mostly because of Silk Road, and he went to prison for it. Now, there is, in my opinion, at least, reasonable doubt that it actually was him who said that, who said, we need to get rid of this person. We need to kill that person, because there is evidence that he, in fact, sold his interest in Silk Road at that point. And the way that investigation was carried out, there were a lot of problems. I mean, at one point, there was a giant task force, and the member of it was a DEA agent who stole Bitcoin that had been seized off Silk Road for himself. So there was a lot of corruption that went on with the case. But nevertheless, he's been in prison now for a significant amount of time. And I think that he's done his time, even if he was the guilty party on it. And I'd like to see him pardoned.
Where do you stand on Edward Snowden?
Needs to be pardoned. I mean, had a reasonable concern. And that's really what it boils down to. Go back to being a police officer. They say you don't have to be right. You just have to be reasonable. As long as you articulate you had a reasonable reason for what you did, then you're normally in the good. Similarly, if you
I look at him as a whistleblower. Is that wrong for me to label him as like the ultimate whistleblower on our government? What else? What the hell else is he supposed to do?
Well, the issue with whistleblowers are you have to bring things to the right people. The problem, though, is they set the system up in a way that you can't get an audience.
Look where that got you, man.
Correct. Look,
It even got you an audience, and what good did that do?
it does nothing
For
and
you or for the
brought
country,
it,
for that matter.
I brought information to everyone on that list, to the special counsel's office, to Congress, to my direct supervisors, to the inspector general's office. If you bring a whistleblower concern, which again has to be a reasonable concern, doesn't have to be right. And all I was asking for was, can you look at this? If it's right, then let's make changes. If I'm wrong, then tell me I'm wrong and explain to me why I'm wrong. That's what I'm telling you that I want. And that's always been what it was. I brought my concern to the inspector general's office, and I got a immediate response that they would not consider it, rejected. Okay. What I came to find out afterwards, and this is standard for the inspector general's office for the Department of Justice, if you email them a whistleblower disclosure, you get an automatic reply from their office rejecting you. And the reason is that they do not want to be accused of not taking up concerns. By rejecting them, they can't be accused of that. Then after the fact, they can go back in and look at what you said and say, oh, we like that one, so we'll take it up. But at that point, years might have gone by. And you look at the person who says, well, throws their hands up in the air, I guess I've been rejected and I'm going to go forward and do things that are wholly inappropriate. Or I guess I'll leave, or I'll be run off. All that goes on. So to Snowden, what options did he have at that point? And then the allegations that he went to Russia. Look, I mean, I've been looking over my shoulder. I have not slept through a night in over 2 years. If there was, if I saw the walls closing in on me more than they have been, then who would fault me for saying, like, look, I'm going to go somewhere else where I can't be touched? Look at Tara Reid. Tara Reid went to Russia. She's the woman who claimed credibly that Joe Biden sexually assaulted her. And there were investigations of her. And she fled to Russia. And can you blame her? I don't.
No. Okay. Let's see. I saw a question over here I wanted to ask you about. Where is it? Shoot. Let's see. Well, it was someone was asking, have you ever had the chance? Oh, Tom, right here. Have you ever had the opportunity to talk to Trump? Maybe give your opinion on the J6 pardons. I mean, you don't have to answer that, but that's a good question.
No, I've never talked to Donald Trump. I've never had an audience with him. I've communicated with people that I guess you could say are like in that world, but never directly with him. And in fact, maybe I'll ask you this question: if you could ask Donald Trump one question, what would it be?
Oh boy. Oh shoot. I don't know. I haven't thought of that. I'll think on that. Shoot, man.
I've thought about it, and I said, look, if I got one chance to ask him a question, like, and have the Wonder Woman lasso of truth around him, I would just ask him, are you lonely? Is it lonely to be you?
Yeah.
When you are surrounded by people all the time, but you know that everyone's coming at you with an angle. That's why all these billionaires are friends, because they can sit in that room with a couple of billionaires and know that that guy's probably not trying to get you to fund his next investment, right?
Yeah,
it's
you know
gotta
what?
be a really lonely existence to know that.
See, you're so much kinder than me. Mine would have been something about like our.
What's your real handicap?
No, it would have been something like, all right, level with me. That's what truth, right? What have you seen with the aliens? Come on now. You know?
Oh yeah.
And now I am looking forward though. He did say that a report's due on his desk Tuesday about the drones. If you heard Tucker Carlson talking, I forgot who he's talking to. I just saw the clip. I didn't see the interview. It was just rolling through Twitter yesterday. And it was, these are Chinese drones, 100%. So, I am nervous as hell. And I was on the record, multiple times on Pat's show, and I should probably go on the record here. We have such high expectations for this incoming presidency, but boy, it could easily be derailed by any number of bad actors. I mean, that's not the breaking news here, but I'm terrified for China and what they're because here's the thing. we thought, oh my gosh, now that we have such a weakling in office, and Joe Biden, what are they going to do to us? Well, look at what happened around the world. How many hotspots flared up thanks to him? I almost feel like with China, they're going to wait until about, I don't know, 2 o'clock Monday afternoon, and then they're going to flip their switch and see what they can get Donald Trump to respond to. Am I wrong in that? It seems counterintuitive, but my gut tells me that.
Yeah, I've talked to a friend of mine who's a very experienced intelligence analyst, Marines, Navy, NSA, FBI, like 4 decades intelligence. And he's always said that China's the big threat. But he's told me that China doesn't want to have a kinetic action here. They think so much long term that they'll just wait for things to happen to us, and then they're confident in that. To him, actually, the biggest physical threat that China would present with these cyber intrusions that Chris Wray was talking about.
That was my follow up to this. Yes, explain what he said on 60 Minutes, where he said the biggest threat, and this dumbass who Christopher Wray, who made J6 the biggest priority in the history of the agency, has the gall to sit there on 60 Minutes and tell us the biggest threat is China embedded in our systems like water, power, and utilities, and God knows where they're embedded, waiting to flip a switch. Bro, you had how many years has he been in that office?
7.5.
7.5 years, and you're just now saying this is a big deal? What did you do to stop this? So that, anyway, continue. I'm sorry, you were about to talk about that.
Well, I mean, their abilities to target people for counterintelligence reasons, for espionage reasons. They have supercomputers that give them their capabilities are vastly exceed our own. They've been able to infiltrate basically every sector. I mean, it's like the original Batman Begins, where they've infiltrated every level of our systems, and we have allowed them in many cases because we're just open and trusting, and we give tours of our water facilities to anybody who asks. The ultimate threat that this individual was telling me, his name is George Hill, experienced intelligence expert. He said China may be shutting down all electricity from DC to New York for a week, and then saying, all right, you ready, America, to come to the table? Oh, you're not? We'll shut it down for another 2 weeks. And can you imagine 3 weeks of no electricity in the most densely populated corridor of the country?
20 years ago, New York lost power for like half a day, and they nearly lost their minds at that.
We are at a significant risk, but China, as far as kinetically, he doesn't anticipate that, and I tend to put my trust in him. He's a pretty squared away guy. I mean, and he even told me with the drones that he believed that it was actually U.S. contractors that were doing some level of scanning for whatever reason, maybe some signals intelligence, maybe even just to check what the American resolve was for, well, we just saw drones in the sky. Like, what are we going to do about it? And we were weighed and measured, and we just went and celebrated Christmas, and everybody just kind of forgot about it, which is boding well for us. The lowest probability was proffered to me that was the most scary one, even scarier than China, was sentient AI that escaped the lab, and we didn't know how to turn it off.
Skynet, we brought it full circle.
Yes, we did.
Okay, one last question, and then I'll let you get out of here. And you're always gracious with your time. And by the way, don't forget, if you're not familiar with his show, the American Radicals podcast, available on Rumble. It's audio available too, like on Spotify, iTunes, so on. So let's say, first of all, let's just cross our fingers, and let's say that Kash Patel becomes the new FBI director. He gets confirmed, everything's rosy there. But you're in his shoes, and you are FBI Director Steve Friend. What are your day one, like, what are your highest priorities? How are you fixing this agency? in your time in office, and you've got to assume, it's a tenure position, but like you said, it's basically become a political one. So let's just assume you only have 4 years to right this ship. What are you doing in his role if that's you as FBI director, Steve?
Well, if we're not going to just rip it and just suspend security clearances for 40,000 people and just we're done here on Monday, there are some actual measures you could take pretty quickly that I think would be effective. The DEI office closing, that's not enough. They need to change the way that their hiring has gone on. Under Christopher Wray, it's about half the employees there are under Chris Wray. They can immediately take action. Everyone who's on probation is fired. So probationary employees, agents, they're probationary for a year and a half after finishing from the academy. We'll give the opportunity to reapply. We're going to revet you, but we don't need cause for that. So that's one. And if you've joined the FBI in the last year, I have to be suspect of what your loyalties are. The 30 by 30 initiative that is just poisoning all of law enforcement, particularly at the federal level in the DOJ, they're all in for it. 30% female representation by 2030 in the management ranks. But if you actually read into it, as I've written about it, it is basically cultural Marxism. It says like job knowledge tests should be done away with. You shouldn't know anything about being in law enforcement. That's discriminatory. Physical fitness standards, grooming standards. We're going to eradicate the white culture from law enforcement. Structurally, we're getting rid of integrated program management. That's the quota system. That needs to go away. We need to get rid of the intelligence collection apparatus, secret police collecting intelligence on American citizens. We're doing away with that. As long as 702 is on the books, we will submit to voluntary warrants for American citizens. We're going to go to the courts on those. And if we don't get them, even though we can look at them, we're not going to do that at all. We're going to decentralize significant portions of it. I don't know why we have to have SWAT teams in every field office. We have a hostage rescue team in Quantico, Virginia. We should have regional SWAT teams that are full-time and capable of responding in pretty quick order. And that way, as opposed to having the default to be, oh, I have an arrest to make, I'll send the SWAT team because the matrix is so broad that, oh, I think that guy has a big dog, we'll send SWAT. No, you're going to actually go ahead and do the job you were trained to do. And if you're not comfortable with that, then there's the door for us. Work from home is gone. I think a lot of people will, especially in the headquarters, will elect to pursue other avenues of employment at that point because there's still people that are working full-time from home. The deputy director doesn't need to be in Washington, D.C. He needs to probably be down in Huntsville, Alabama, where there's a giant complex there. That's eventually where you want to put headquarters outside of the Beltway. I think that we need to remove so many people from senior executive management and reassign them to go do their job. I would start a giant crime suppression initiative in violent areas where they've been afflicted by not just the DOJ, but by just like this BLM friendly policing policies and these Soros prosecutors. So we're going to be there to help our local partners. And if you're in a position of management at headquarters, I think I have you on a violent crimes squad in Chicago or Memphis or New Orleans or San Juan, Puerto Rico next week. If you don't want to do the job of an FBI agent, there's the door for you. A lot of people are going to have to step up and join into leadership. They're just capable people who have always just done the job, know how the job can be. We're not going to make you relocate. You're working in the Omaha field office. You're the special agent in charge now. You step up, and that's how it's going to have to be. And then it would seriously take up the consideration that we would just do away with the firearms. I've talked to you about it before. Make the FBI an unarmed agency of investigators. Force them to partner with local agencies and say, look, we're going to investigate the crimes that you need investigated, sheriff. And if we can take them federal, we will. And if we do an investigation and you, sheriff, say, I'm not arresting that guy, then we're not going to arrest them. We're not going to be able to arrest them. So that's how we're going to do things from now on. And that's probably a lot more extreme. I think a lot of people get a little nervous about that. But to me, that's the ultimate. You take the teeth out of the attack dog and it can't bite you regardless of who is the president.
I like the idea that the only ones armed in the scenario are the locals. the local law enforcement as opposed to the feds. Boy, that I had no idea when I asked you that question. It was like, you know, this wasn't a job interview, right? I mean, because you came prepared. Holy crap! Very good. That's some great stuff. Hopefully, Kash Patel will see this, or someone in the administration, because that's a great list, bro. Uh, okay, and if you want more of this wisdom, and I'm telling you stuff that will enlighten you but enrage you at the same time, you got to check out the American Radicals podcast over on Rumble. You alluded to something there when you were talking. You've written about it. Where are your writings housed?
Everywhere and anywhere. So I've done about a dozen or so op-eds, been at the Federalist, Daily Caller, The Blaze has published a couple of them, Uncover DC. And whenever I have a inkling to go do it, I've been able to get those pushed out, which is really cool. Have the book too, which is still available for sale on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. True Blue, My Journey from Beat Cop to Suspended FBI Whistleblower. You can just type in True Blue and Stephen Friend, Stephen with a PH, because I'm indicating that it's royalty, and it's there.
I don't know. I don't follow that, but that's good. Stephen with a PH because it's royalty.
That's the indicator that I've always told, that PH was an indicator of royalty. Yes, and I'm taking credit for it.
Okay. I didn't know that. Okay, and by the way, just to reiterate something we mentioned at the beginning there, his handle on X is, I have to hide this. Sorry, there we go. At Real Steve Friend. DMs are open. If you want an honorable man working for you, if you have a job available, he lives in the Daytona Beach, Florida area of the country, and this federal government took your tax dollars and use them against people like Steve for blowing the whistle, and continue to do so. And he could definitely use, I guess, for lack of a better word, employment. Right? I mean, I know that you work, but if there's someone out there that wants somebody with just a spine made of steel and just I just can't say enough good things about you, brother. And I'm sorry that your life has been turned upside down. And who knows, maybe a Kash Patel FBI will come calling and you'll return to your rightful place. But I'll be rooting for you, man. Keep me updated on everything. Check out his Twitter feed and his podcast, American Radicals. And we will see you again tomorrow, gang. About 22 hours from now. And we will do the Friday live stream, have some fun with Steve Baker and Shim Von Schreck. Until then, I hope that you guys take it easy. Stay warm. It's about to get really nasty cold out there, and be safe. Thanks again.